So I have definitely been part of that statistic of people who bought self-help books and did not finish them. Sometimes didn't even start them. So today I want to just talk about the self-help industry, self-help book industry as a whole, and talk about some alternatives to these stereotypical, very marketable books. Because I want to be very clear here. Books have been a huge part of saving my life and have been a huge part of my healing journey. Just not self-help books. So I have some self-help books here, but not many because I have given them away to charity or whatever. The only ones that I keep are like vintage copies like this, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. It's a classic. And any books that belonged to my dad. I'm Okay, You're Okay. The seven habits of highly effective people. I think I got to habit number 3. So I'm you can do the math on that, on how effective I am. The Mood Cure. Tried to cure my mood. Managing Oneself. Did not help me manage myself. And also, You Are Not the Target. I haven't read this one. Maybe I should. Maybe I should read that one because I often feel like the target. But more recently, a particular book that I read that I was putting off reading for so long because I was like, this is going to be it. This is going to cure every problem that I have. Am I even ready for that level of curedom? And that book was You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. Now, let's talk about this book. And Louise Hay. I don't want to talk badly of the dead, because she is, in fact, dead. But there's some things that we need to talk about in regards to this book and her as a person. So Hay claimed that she had cancer, and she cured it through positive thinking. Conveniently, all the doctors who were involved in her diagnosis are dead or missing, and all records have been lost, but we're just going to take her word for it. She also claimed to cure her fibromyalgia as well through positive thinking. She also had plastic surgery. So her positive thinking can cure cancer, but can't, get rid of a few wrinkles. But here is the real problematic part. I mean, all of that is problematic. But she says if positive thinking doesn't cure your ailments, you weren't doing it right. You just weren't positive enough. And it is your fault that you still have the disease. Imagine what this would do to someone who has cancer, who has lupus, who has fibromyalgia, any sort of chronic serious illness, any of these diseases that do not have a cure today. There are thousands upon thousands of self-help books, and some are truly terrible. But the worst I've ever encountered is the pernicious bestseller You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, which inexplicably has sold over 50 million copies. I believe we create every so-called illness in our body, declares Hay. If you can limit yourself to only having joyous, loving thoughts, she says, you won't get ill. And if you already are ill, you can cure yourself. All you have to do is consciously release any mental patterns that could express as dis-ease in any way. Now, when I heard this whole dis-ease thing, as a young, impressionable person in my early 20s, I was like, oh, that's genius. That's what dis-ease is. Your body is at dis-ease. So I just have to go into ease. I didn't have any physical ailments when I bought this book. Well, I kind of did. But it was all part of my mental illness. I had extremely bad agoraphobia, extremely bad anxiety, extremely bad depression. And I was really hoping that this book would cure me. It did not. And then I started to look into its history, and what I found really shocked me to my core. Hello, Willow. Hello. Mm-hmm. Hay represents a return to the Dark Ages, the Unenlightenment, when disease and disability were seen as some kind of divine retribution for moral lapses or sins. If you're guilty these days of the crime of not thinking positively enough, of finding life difficult, unfair, or frightening, well then, says Hay, you will be punished with some ghastly affliction. So not only are you ill, you must now also suffer the additional toxic burdens of shame and guilt. born of Hay's oppressive judgment that you did this to yourself. So the book is basically, you have to love yourself. You have to look in the mirror and tell yourself, I love you, and you have to do that like several times a day, and then all your problems will go away and you'll be cured. But then at the back of the book, there's like this fun little alphabetical index of all these diseases and what they're caused by. An example is most bladder problems come from being pissed off, usually at a partner. Animal bites are caused by anger turned inward, a need for punishment. Bug bites, by contrast, happen when you have guilt over small things, like guilt over not being positive enough. So yeah, I believe this book has probably done way more harm than good. Another one that I put a lot of hope into was Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. You know, as someone who all throughout their life, especially in their 20s, really didn't like the person that they were, this was the perfect title for me. I was like, yes, I need to break that habit of being myself. And what's so terrible about this one specifically is that it's like rooted in science. And it's, once again, it's just it's like what Louise Hay is saying, but with more more like neuroscience. Eventually, I just gave up on these books, and then I discovered reading as a passion, as a hobby, as a lifestyle. And that was a major, major turning point for me. So I'm going to talk about books that have actually changed my life and helped me overcome some really debilitating issues that I had going on. And so I think some of these could possibly be classified as self-help books, but they're more like self-help adjacent. Now, if you're going to read nonfiction books with the sole purpose of, development, don't buy anything that, is on the bestseller list on Amazon. Don't buy anything that you'd buy in an airport or anything. Ideally, buy something that was written before the age of the internet. I know that sounds a little counterintuitive. So one of the big problems that I struggled with was in relationships, codependency and anxious attachment. And I read Codependent No More and No More Being Anxiously Attached or something. And those books did nothing apart from make me feel guilty for why I had read these books and I was still having these struggles. Until I found The Eden Project. And this is a Jungian perspective on relationships. So it's The Eden Project in Search of the Magical Other. And this book has single-handedly changed how I show up in relationships. I was just underlining so much. I think I've underlined at least 5 or 6 things in every page. And this is the thing about books like this that aren't in the mainstream. They are just like packed full of gems. There's no filler. There is no filler in this book. And it's beautifully written as well. And it's based in, it's based in Jungian psychology, but you don't need to be a pro in that. You don't even have to have read Jung, to be honest. It gave me a complete paradigm shift, which is oftentimes what you need for real change. And it made me see that, why I was having these codependent issues. And not, just like, oh, it's because your parents didn't give you enough goodnight hugs and kisses, but kind of. I mean, obviously, I still struggle a little bit sometimes with a little bit of codependency as a treat. But when I am struggling, I'm able to return to this book and go to some of my underlines and be like, okay. And see what went wrong what went wrong in my thinking pattern. So this is a hard book to get a hold of. Okay, but I did buy it on Amazon. But secondhand. But it took a very long time to arrive, and it arrived with some sort of strange goo on it. Another one that I read recently, The Primal Wound. And this is a transpersonal view of trauma, addiction, and growth. So this is for anyone who has trauma. Do you have trauma? I don't know. Not many people do. But this one is a little bit more dense than that one. This one is more, I think it's actually kind of more aimed at therapists. transpersonal therapists. But yeah, again, so many, and there's diagrams. And I love a good diagram. Another one, this one is Swamplands of the Soul, New Life in Dismal Places. And this one seems like a catch-all. I haven't actually read it yet. It's guilt, grief, loss, betrayal, doubt, loneliness, depression, despair, obsessions, addiction, anger, fear, anxiety. Just a average Monday, really. So this is all about, like, it's kind of aimed at people in their sort of middle age, but you can read it at any age, I assume. Am I middle-aged? I'm almost 35. Is that middle-aged? I don't know. And then this is one that I recently bought that I have not read yet because I've been busy, guys. I've been busy not being codependent. But it is The Problem of the Puer Eternus. And I believe this is all about... this one is kind of about healing your inner child. So I'm very excited to read this one. So those are psychology books. Now I want to talk about fiction, but not just fiction, literary fiction. There's a few fiction books that I've read that I return to. One in particular that I return to every year. This is kind of the book that got me to. It kind of prepped me for this one, you know, and that is The Pisces by Melissa Broder. This is my favorite book, and I do read it every year. It's sort of surrealist. It's about a woman who falls in love with a merman and has this very intense, passionate affair with him. But it's really about a woman who suffers from extreme emptiness, which she tries to cure with love and relationships and sex. And it's hilarious. I often think about this book. And sometimes, and it's helped me through a lot. Honestly, it's helped me through a lot. You know, the thing that fiction does that nonfiction can't really do is it really exposes like the humanity of it all and really gets into the crevices and says things. It speaks out loud the things that are like innermost, like that happens in the dark, hollow tendrils of your mind. God. And then she came out, because I also love Milk Fed, her other book. I would say she's one of my favorite authors. And then she came out with Death Valley. And I was really, really excited to get this. I paid for the hardback, even though I hate hardbacks, but I just wanted it ASAP. And I was like, it's not really doing it for me. The themes don't resonate with me. It's about the main character recently lost her dad, as in he died. And she also has a husband who has a chronic mysterious illness. So it's about her navigation of that. And at the time, a year ago, I read that and I was like, can't relate to any of this. Now, very relatable. So I'm actually going to reread this and see if it kind of has the same effect, because I've been looking for a book about grief, because my father did in fact die very recently, and I've been struggling with grief. Sorry if this is oversharing. So yeah, I'm looking for, preferably a fiction book about grief. So I'll probably read this again. Another book recently that I read that really reignited my love for literary fiction and how it can be so illuminating. Big Swiss as well. For me, they have to be funny. They have to be, because that's also how I deal in my mind and in the world with trauma and bad things, is like humor. So I think it really helps me digest the messages in them. This is about a transcriber who is transcribing. She moves to this like little town where everyone knows each other, and she is transcribing these therapy sessions for the local therapist, and she falls in love with one of the clients just through transcribing, and then she has an affair with the client, and the client doesn't know that she is the transcriber, and has listened to all of her deepest, darkest secrets. It's also sapphic, so points for that. What else? So yeah, that kind of covers the fiction, honestly. I could maybe talk about some classics like East of Eden and John Williams Stoner, but we're gonna keep it short. This one's a little bit out there. St. Teresa of Avila Interior Castle. Now, I grew up very religious. I wanted to be a nun when I was 18. Didn't work out. I'm not a nun. But yeah, I kind of, fell away there. But I think in like 2022, I was really sick. Not that sick. I had like a heavy cold, and I was like, that's the only time I pray, really. I'm like, God, please cure me. Because I was like afraid I was going to die or something. I'm so dramatic when I'm sick. And I was like, if you cure me, I'll read a religious text. I'll read a holy book. And amazingly, I recovered from the head cold. So I was like, okay, so I better stick to my promise in case God strikes me down with, the flu or something. And this is what I went for. And it is kind of a masterpiece of spiritual literature. This 16th century work was inspired by a mystical vision that came upon the revered Saint Teresa of Avila, one of the most gifted and beloved religious figures in history. It took me ages to read it. It's really metaphysical. She basically, it's one big, wow, it's underlining like crazy. I really enjoyed this. I just really like the imagery of inside you being a mansion and with lots of different rooms. And yeah, okay, I guess the point is that God is at the center. I haven't really been able to get to that part yet, but it's kind of about meditation. Prayer can be meditation. Another kind of spiritual book, but maybe not Christian. No, this is not a Christian book. The Prophet by, I cannot pronounce his name, Khalil Gibran. Just a really, really beautiful book. It felt like such a spiritually enriching experience to read it, and I will probably read it again. This is not my copy though. It's a good bedside book to pick up and dip in and out of. And then of course there's memoirs and biographies. Some of the ones that I found particularly impactful. Educated, amazing. If you haven't read this, read it. Kind of along the same vein, The Glass Castle. I actually preferred this over Educated. And then, okay, this one is a little bit of a wild card. It came from Ohio, and this is the life story of R.L. Stine, the author of Goosebumps. And I found this, and this is a book for kids. I found this to be such an inspiring read. It's just all about how he became a famous author, and like he overcame a lot of hardships, and it was, a lot of like failures. And I just thought it was super inspiring. So this is for anyone who's like in the creative sphere. I don't know. I was just like, I think about this book whenever I'm struggling. I'm like, well, R.L. Stine made it. So that's kind of all I wanted to say about this. Please do leave some recommendations in the comments about books that changed your life, and maybe I'll see you soon. Great.